The morning a neighbor stood in court and said my disabled son deserved the death penalty. Something inside me went still, like the lake in winter, right before it freezes over. I didn't shout. I didn't move. I just set my coffee down, put a hand on my boy's shoulder, and felt the whole room hold its breath. But it didn't start in a courtroom. It started with a mailbox. Last spring, our HOA elected a new board, fresh paint, fresh rules, and fresh faces, eager to prove they were in charge. At the center of it all was a woman named Cheryl, though most neighbors called her Karen when she couldn't hear them. She wasn't the meanest person I'd ever met, but she might have been the loudest the first week. She sent 3 violation notices: grass height, flag bracket angle, mailbox slant. My mailbox, the same one my son Jacob sits on after his therapy walks, leans a little. He's 22 on the spectrum. And that rough cedar reminds him of the old ranch where his grandpa taught me to do things slow, steady, and right. I replaced the bracket, painted the post, sent a polite note. I figured we were neighbors, not enemies. But then came the second wave. No chalk on sidewalks. No porch music after 7 p.m. No vehicles parked overnight, I swear. If they could have regulated cloud shapes, they would have. One warm evening, Jacob drew a big uneven heart in chalk for his mom, blue and green, lopsided and perfect. I was sweeping the porch when Cheryl marched up like she was serving a warrant. Sidewalk defacement. She said, phone raised, already recording. It's chalk, I said. Raynal, take it. Rules are rules, she smiled, but it wasn't friendly. We can't let standards slip. I looked at the heart. Then at my son, chewing his sleeve, eyes wide and trusting. We'll wash it, I said quietly. But ma'am, maybe talk to your neighbor before you start filming his kid. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I found an orange notice zip-tied to our porch rail like a warning flag. Persistent violations, hearing scheduled. The list was absurd. Chalk residue. Auditory disturbance that was Jacob's therapy metronome. Unauthorized mailbox brace. And suspicious presence after dark, meaning my son. Standing barefoot in the yard, counting stars the way his therapist taught him to calm his heart. When we showed up at the HOA meeting, it felt less like a discussion and more like a trial. Cheryl sat front and center, hair lacquered, binder stacked high. She tossed out words like property values and zero tolerance. People nodded, because nodding is easier than thinking. I let her talk. Then I stood up and told them about Jacob, his routines, his therapy, the chalk hearts, the ticking metronome that slows his nerves. I spoke low, neighbor to neighbor. You don't bulldoze folks with a story. You invite them to sit on the porch and listen. I thought I got through. Some faces softened. A few dads looked down at their shoes. Then Cheryl said almost cheerfully, we can't make exceptions. If we don't set an example, people like him will just keep taking more. People like him, the words hit like a cold wind. Jacob didn't understand. He just scratched the back of his hand and whispered, did I do something wrong? I thanked the board for their time, took my son's hand, and we left. I told myself it would blow over, it didn't. A week later, Cheryl called the sheriff on a prowler. It was Jacob, wearing my old Marine sweatshirt, pacing the flagstones, counting 1-2-3-4. Another therapy technique. The deputy knew us. He apologized. Told Cheryl to stop abusing 911. She argued on the lawn, under the porch light. While my son watched from behind the screen door, scared but silent, the deputy left, shaking his head. Cheryl stormed off, promising escalation. And she meant it. The next thing I knew, we were served a restraining order petition. She claimed Jacob had threatened her using military codes and tactical pacing. Tactical pacing. I've heard a lot of wild phrases in my life, but that one was new. So we went to court. I put on my best suit. Jacob wore a tie that matched his eyes. The courtroom air was cool and dry, like the inside of a church. The judge was an old friend from civic boards and 4th of July cookouts. I nodded his way, the kind of nod neighbors share when words aren't needed. Then Cheryl took the stand. And Lord, she performed. She described surveillance behavior, coded signals, and called a metronome a weapon of intimidation. Then she looked right at the judge and said the words that froze the entire room. Some behaviors should be disqualifying for life. If we had the death penalty for domestic terrorists, I'd petition for it. You could hear the air leave the room. Even her own lawyer winced. I didn't react. Because when a storm hits, you don't panic. You've been rained on before. I only stood when Jacob's cold hand reached for mine. The judge glanced my way, a silent, "Do you wish to respond?" "I did, Your Honor," I said, steady. "I'd like to." He nodded. I turned to Cheryl. "My name is Daniel Brooks," I said. "I'm a homeowner here in Cedar Ridge, and the county's special counsel for civil rights compliance. Also a former JAG officer. Ma'am, you may not have known who I am. That's fine. You don't need to know a man's job to treat his family with respect." Told the court about Jacob, the diagnosis, the therapy, the metronome, the chalk heart. I didn't deliver a speech. I painted them a picture. The sound of that slow, steady tick. The tilt of the mailbox. The smell of wet chalk after spring rain. And I told them how every Memorial Day, our flag flies low. Because my father taught me what this country's promises cost, then I said what needed to be said. Calling my son a terrorist because he paces is not a misunderstanding, it's cruelty. If you fear what you don't understand, you don't call the sheriff. You ask. You learn. You knock on the door and bring cookies. The silence afterward. It was deep. The kind that humbles you. My attorney introduced Jacob's therapist on video. She explained pacing, stimming, counting. Said Jacob was one of her most disciplined patients. Then the deputy testified that he'd responded once, found no threat, and advised Cheryl to use common sense. Last came our neighbor across the street, a retired music teacher. She said she sometimes matched Jacob's counting with her breath, and that it helped her heart feel calm. She teared up before she finished. So did a few others. The judge didn't take long. Petition denied. He warned Cheryl about abusing the system, then leaned forward, hands folded, and said, "We live in a time when it's easy to film a problem and hard to fix one. This boy isn't a problem. He's a person. See him. Gavel. Case closed. But justice doesn't last unless you anchor it. So I filed a civil rights complaint through another lawyer to stay clean." The HOA called an emergency meeting. This time I didn't walk in alone. The retired teacher came. The deputy, off duty, stood in the back. 3 moms with special needs kids showed up. Our pastor came to ball cap, coffee in hand. Dozens of neighbors, good folks. Busy folks all there because they'd seen that chalk heart and realized it mattered. Cheryl tried to hold her gavel like a crown. "We will maintain standards," she said. "So will we," the room answered. The vote passed. 19-2. She was censured. New guidelines written. No filming minors. No weaponizing 911. Clear accommodations for disabled residents. The mailbox brace. Approved. Chalk. Allowed. I even volunteered to power wash any leftover doodles before big events. Because when you love a place, you take care of it. When the meeting ended, Cheryl didn't look at me. She looked small. Like someone realizing the town was bigger than her binder. I didn't hate her. I just hoped she learned the difference between order and control. One protects neighbors. The other turns them into enemies. A week later, the deputy stopped by with his little girl. She brought a bag of pastel chalks. She drew a yellow sun on the walk. Jacob added a blue river. I sketched a crooked barn that looked nothing like my grandpa's, but they laughed anyway. We didn't film it. We didn't post it. It rained that night and washed it all away, but not the feeling. Since the hearing, Jacob sleeps easier. He still counts, and some nights, I stand beside him on the porch and count 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The metronome ticks steady on the table. The flag above us whispers in the breeze. The lake is calm again. And for the first time in a long while, so am I. Sometimes a crooked mailbox isn't a flaw. It's a sign that life leans where love sits. We don't need new rules. We just need old decency, because you don't win anything worth having by humiliating people. You win by showing them a better way to live side by side. Have you ever faced an HOA like this? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you believe some fights are worth having, hit subscribe. And let's stand up together.